At the top we have all of our settings and status symbols. We can use our status to tell us the frame rate and the resolution. We've got options for options. We've got system settings, so we can change parameters of the desk. We've got our reference mode, which again tells us our resolutions, frame rates and aspect ratios. Configuration, so we actually use the configuration pane to configure parts of each board. We have reset, so we can reset the board to a standard default setting. User settings, so I can change things like my schemes. Okay, so across the top of our Carbonite frame, we have our different configuration settings just on the left side of the board. We have our ME store and recall buttons just here for recalling memories. And here we've got our navigation pane and dials to allow us to navigate through the switcher. And just here we've got the secondary sort of navigation buttons. Next I have sort of different personalities I can use, and then I have saving my settings to the board, loading settings from the board. I then have my different store and recall states at the top, and then I have some navigation bars and knobs around this area. This is also a navigation bar plunger that I can use to change settings on my DVEs. Okay, so navigating the ME. Each ME is set out very similarly. They are mapped exactly the same. So all of our video sources are all on a central bus, which we can access either in our preview pane or our program pane. At the bottom of the ME, we have our preview bus, or in this instance, Ross have called it a preset bus. On our secondary line, we have our background or our program bus. Our third bus is our key, auxiliary and custom control bus. Here we can set and pick our different sources for our keys. Across this top bus, we have our key types, our key number selects, our auxiliary follows. On ME1, that changes to our different desk types, ME1, and MiniME1, MiniME2, and multi-screen. And we have our different banks for our custom control buttons. Along this right hand side, we have our transition pane, where we can transition, cut on our different key types, our key sources. We can apply effects to our keys, so transitioning on and off. And we can set our different transition types, our key source transition types, and our effects for transition. Just down the bottom here, we have cut, auto transition, and roll clip. So with our roll clip function, we can roll clip on media. With our cut function, we can simply cut between our video sources. Auto transition allows us to set a set of primary attributes to a transition. So we could set a dissolve with a 5-frame transition type, or we could set a wipe with a 60-frame transition type, a digital video effect, or media transition. When I press auto transition, you'll note that the desk does the work for us. We then have our manual fader bar to allow the operator to transition between video sources themselves. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, we have our preview bus. When I'm selecting between camera sources or video sources, I use my preview bus and then a transition. What I don't want to do is use straight cuts between my program, as this is my active and live channel. So cutting between sources is very easy. We pick a source on our preview bus. So in this instance, I'm going to pick camera 1. everything works in a row. So I pick camera 1 and transition. When I do that, you'll notice on the multi-viewer that there's a green tally around our preview channel and a red tally around our program channel. Okay, so whilst using these different transition types, we can also use our dashboard live view to alter parameters of our transitions. So if I press dissolve, on my dashboard display I have various different dissolve times and the different ME options that I can choose. So as we're working on ME2, I ensure that ME2 is picked, transition types is also picked, and then I can select dissolve times from here. So let's say I want to dissolve 2 frames together over 5 frames duration. If I press the 5 frames, press my auto transition, it takes 5 frames to transition between the 2 frames. Let's say I need a slower transition, intermediary times. Let's say I want 10 frames, press it, takes 10 frames of time to transition between the 2 sources. 60 frames is a much slower dissolve between the 2. I can also change the types with using my dashboard and my transition pane. I can change the different types of effects that we apply to transitions. So if I choose my wipe, I can apply different transitions using my touchscreen interface on dashboard. Applying these applies different wipes and different effects. So if I use a DVE, I can use different DVE patterns, again applying exactly the same rate as I set before. If I need to change the rate, rather than having to go back through the menus, I can very quickly press my ME rates just down on the transition parameters pane and change that back down to 10 frames, and it will take 10 frames to transition between the 2. Okay, so we're going to go through setting a chroma key. So ME2 we do all of our main cutting on, ME1 we do all of our graphics on. So firstly I'm going to pick the kind of key type that I want to do. So I want to do a chroma key. So I pick my chroma key across my key select or key type pane. I then pick the key number that I'm going to put the frame, the chroma key onto. I then actually cut my key on, and then I select my parameters for the key itself. So I want to use a basic mode and I need to pick a colour. So in this instance I'm going to pick green, and then I'm going to initialize. That's in effect telling the board to pick anything that's green and take it out of the image. I then need to select the key reference. So for this I'm going to pick camera 2 as my key source. So when I select my key source as camera 2, you'll note on our ME1 multi-view pane that we have a chair with a black background. So the next part is I need to actually select a background. So using my background or program bus, I can pick various different video sources. So in this instance, I'm going to use something that's on one of the playout channels, which is just a video. So when I press my background source, you'll note that the multi-viewer on ME1 displays this video that's in the background with the chair in front.